The strange reward. The cold, metallic walls of the throne chamber reflected the red glow of torches burning in iron holders. The air smelled of blood, sweat, and power. The warlord sat on his high throne, his sharp golden armor shining under the dim lights. His black eyes stared down at the man standing before him. The man was Captain Eric Vance, a human soldier from Earth. His clothes were torn, his armor dented, but his eyes remained sharp and fearless. He had fought in the war between humans and the Xerath Empire, a cruel alien race that ruled with fear. Now, he stood in the heart of their fortress, victorious, but not free. "You have fought well, human," the warlord said, his voice deep like thunder. "You are the first of your kind to defeat my best warriors. It is only fair that you receive a reward." Eric said nothing, waiting for what was to come. He had learned long ago that words were dangerous in places like this. The warlord lifted his hand. At his signal, 2 guards dragged in 2 chained alien women. The heavy metal links rattled as the women were pulled forward. Their hands were bound in front of them, their ankles shackled. "Choose one," the warlord commanded. "She will be yours, a prize for your victory." Eric looked at the 2 women. They were nothing alike. The first, Lariah, had deep red skin and glowing golden eyes. Her body was strong, built for war. Scars covered her arms, proof of many battles. Even with her hands chained, she stood tall, her gaze full of fire. She was a warrior, a fighter, someone who did not break easily. The second, Saren, had silver hair that shimmered like stardust. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes dark and endless, as if hiding secrets. She looked calm, too calm. There was something unsettling about her, something that made even the guards hesitate when standing near her. "One is a warrior," the warlord said. "A killer, strong, but predictable." He turned his gaze toward Saren. "The other is something else, something even I do not understand." Eric frowned. He had fought enough battles to know that things were never as simple as they seemed. He could feel it, the tension in the air, the way the warlord studied him, waiting to see what choice he would make. "What happens to the one I don't choose?" Eric asked. The warlord grinned, showing sharp teeth. "She will die. That is the rule of my empire." Silence filled the chamber. The guard smirked, expecting Eric to make a quick decision. A reward like this was rare. Any other warrior would have chosen already. But Eric was not just any warrior. His mind worked fast. If the warlord wanted him to choose one, then it meant something. There was a game being played here, a trap hidden in plain sight. The warlord had power, but he enjoyed watching others struggle under his control. Eric exhaled slowly, then spoke. "I choose both." The room went still. The warlord's grin disappeared. The guards looked at each other, confused. Even Lariah and Saren turned their heads toward Eric, surprised. "You what?" the warlord growled. "I choose both," Eric repeated, his voice firm. "You said I deserve a reward. I fought your warriors. I survived. My reward is both of them." The warlord leaned forward, his golden armor clinking. His black eyes studied Eric, searching for weakness. "That is not the rule," he said. "I don't follow your rules," Eric answered. "I follow mine." The warlord's face darkened. His fingers tapped against the armrest of his throne. The room felt heavier, as if the walls themselves had closed in. "You are either very brave," the warlord said, his voice slow and dangerous, "or very foolish." Eric didn't blink. Maybe both. A long silence stretched between them. The guards gripped their weapons, waiting for the order to strike. Lariah narrowed her eyes at Eric, as if trying to understand his plan. Saren remained emotionless, her silver hair falling over her face. Then the warlord laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that made the flames flicker. "You amuse me, human," he said. "But amusement is not enough to break the law of my empire." His laughter faded, and his expression turned hard. You will choose one, or I will have you executed." Eric clenched his fists. He had expected this. He had hoped the warlord would accept the challenge, but he was not foolish enough to think this would be easy. His mind raced. How do I turn this around? How do I survive this? Then, to everyone's surprise, Saren spoke. "You do not understand, warlord," she said softly. Her voice was smooth, like flowing water, but it carried weight. Power. This human is not like the others. If you kill him, you will regret it. The warlord turned his dark gaze on her. "And why is that?" Saren smiled. "Because he just changed the game." Before anyone could react, the torches flickered, the walls trembled, and the chains around Saren's wrists snapped open, on their own. The guards gasped. Lariah tensed. Eric took a step back, realizing that something was very, very wrong. The warlord rose from his throne, his golden armor reflecting the firelight. "You tricked me," he hissed at Saren. Saren lifted her unchained hands. She looked at Eric and smiled. "I didn't trick anyone. He made a choice, and now we all live with it." The warlord lifted his hand, a silent command. The guards charged toward Eric. The fight for freedom. The moment Eric saw the warlord's hand rise, he knew what was coming. Kill him. The order didn't need to be spoken. The guards charged toward him, their boots slamming against the cold metal floor. Their weapons, a mix of energy blades and plasma rifles, glowed in the dim torchlight. Eric's instincts kicked in. His body moved before his mind caught up. Survival first. Questions later. He dived to the side, rolling as a plasma blast scorched the spot where he had stood just seconds ago. The heat burned against his skin, even through his torn armor. Lariah tensed, her eyes scanning the chaos. But her hands were still bound. She was a warrior without a weapon, a lion with clipped claws. Saren, on the other hand, didn't move. She simply watched. Eric gritted his teeth. "I just risked my life for both of them. Is she really going to stand there and do nothing?" A guard lunged at him. Eric dodged, grabbing the alien's wrist and twisting hard. The guard screamed as his weapon dropped. Eric caught it midair, a heavy plasma pistol, still warm from recent use. He fired without hesitation. The first shot slammed into an approaching guard's chest, sending him crashing into the stone pillar behind him. The second shot grazed another's shoulder, spinning him around. The warlord watched from his throne, his black eyes glowing with amusement. "You are fast, human, but not fast enough." As if in response, the main gates of the chamber burst open. More guards flooded in, at least a dozen heavily armored warriors, their rifles aimed directly at Eric. Eric swore under his breath. He could fight 2, 3, maybe 4 enemies at once, but not this many. Then, Lariah moved. With a snarl, she yanked her chains apart with brute force. The metal links snapped like brittle glass, shattering across the floor. The guards nearest to her hesitated, their eyes widening in shock. "Finally," she muttered, flexing her fingers. Eric barely had time to react before she launched herself forward, her bare fists colliding with the nearest enemy. The impact sent the guard flying backward, his armor dented from the sheer force of her punch. Lariah was a warrior in every sense of the word. No weapons, no armor, just raw power. 2 more guards lunged at her. She ducked under a plasma blade, then slammed her knee into the attacker's ribs. The crack of breaking bones echoed through the chamber. Eric couldn't help but smirk. Good. She was on his side now. But then came the real problem. Saren. She still hadn't moved. She stood in the same spot, watching the chaos unfold, her silver hair glowing faintly in the torchlight. Eric saw the moment the warlord's eyes locked onto her. "Restrain the Starborn," the warlord growled. The guards rushed at her. Something changed. The air grew heavy. The torches flickered wildly, their flames stretching toward Saren as if pulled by an unseen force. She sighed, tilting her head. Then, with a simple gesture, she raised one hand. The entire room froze. The guards stopped moving mid-step, their bodies suspended in the air as if time itself had shattered. Loraya stopped fighting, her breathing heavy, her fists clenched. Even Eric felt something press down on him, like an invisible hand gripping his chest. The warlord rose from his throne, his expression unreadable. "You're stronger than before," he murmured. Saren turned her head slightly, her dark, endless eyes fixing on him. "And you are weaker." The pressure vanished. The guards collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, their bodies trembling from the aftershock of whatever Saren had done. Eric exhaled sharply. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it. What the hell is she? Saren stepped forward, her bare feet making no sound against the stone. "You never planned to let him leave, did you?" she asked, her voice soft but unshaken. The warlord smirked. "Of course not." Saren smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Then I suppose we are done here." She snapped her fingers. The entire chamber shook. The torches exploded, sending waves of fire outward. The walls cracked, deep fissures running along the stone like veins. The guards scrambled to escape as the ceiling above them began to crumble. Eric didn't wait to see what happened next. He grabbed Loraya's arm and ran. Saren followed at a casual pace, as if none of this concerned her. The floor beneath them crumbled, but she walked as if the universe itself bent around her will. The warlord remained on his throne, watching them flee. "This is not over," he whispered. "Escape into the unknown." Eric, Loraya, and Saren raced through the corridors, alarms blaring behind them. "Explain now," Eric demanded as they ran. "What the hell was that?" Saren smiled faintly, but said nothing. Loraya, still panting from the fight, glanced at her with narrowed eyes. "She's not like us," she muttered. "Not like any of us." The corridor ahead led to the docking bay, where stolen ships were kept, their only chance of escape. But as they neared the exit, a massive explosion shook the floor beneath them. A metallic titan, a monstrous war machine powered by stolen starborn energy, descended from the ceiling, blocking their path. Eric cursed. Of course, there's a boss fight. The machine locked onto them, its cannons glowing with unstable power. Saren finally sighed. "I was hoping we could avoid this," she murmured. Then, for the first time since their escape began, her eyes glowed. Not silver, not blue, but pure, blinding white. The chase begins. The war machine's cannons hummed with unstable energy, crackling like caged lightning. Its massive armored body loomed over the corridor, blocking their only escape route. The moment its targeting sensors locked onto them, Eric knew they were in trouble. "Move," he shouted, grabbing Loraya's wrist and pulling her to the side just as the first blast fired. The explosion ripped through the corridor, sending shockwaves that tore chunks of metal and stone from the walls. The force threw Eric off his feet, sending him rolling across the floor. His head slammed against the cold steel, stars bursting in his vision. Loraya landed beside him, groaning. "I hate machines," she growled, shaking off the dust. Saren, however, hadn't moved. She stood exactly where she had been, watching the machine with an almost bored expression. The dust swirled around her, untouched by the force of the blast. The Titan's cannons recharge, readying for another attack. Saren sighed. Enough. She raised her hand. A pulse of invisible energy rippled outward from her fingertips. The air itself twisted, warping around the wave of power as it struck the war machine. For a second, the Titan froze, not like a mechanical failure, but as if time itself had locked it in place. The humming of its energy cannons cut off abruptly, leaving an unnatural silence in the air. Eric struggled to his feet, watching in disbelief. What did you? Crack. The Titan shattered. Not exploded, not broken. It simply fell apart. Every piece of its massive frame collapsed into dust, disintegrating like sand slipping through fingers. The energy that once powered it snuffed out, vanishing as if it had never existed. Saren lowered her hand, tilting her head slightly. "That's better." Larea stared at her, stunned. That was stolen Starborn technology. Saren shrugged. "And now it's not." Eric exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "You just keep getting scarier, don't you?" Saren turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You have no idea." But there was no time to dwell on it. Alarms blared louder than before, and distant shouting echoed through the corridors. The warlord's forces were mobilizing. They had just taken down his most prized war machine. The entire palace was now after them. A desperate escape. "We need to get to the docking bay," Eric said, gripping his plasma pistol tighter. "Fast." Larea nodded, agreed. "I'd rather not fight an entire army today." They ran through the winding halls of the warlord's fortress, their footsteps echoing against the cold steel floors. The red emergency lights cast long shadows, making everything feel even more dangerous. Every corner they turned, more heavily armed guards appeared, but now Eric had a strategy. Larea took the front, her brute strength clearing a path. She moved like a force of nature, fists colliding with armored enemies and sending them flying. Eric covered the sides, using his plasma pistol to take out snipers and long-range threats. He was fast, precise, and ruthless, a soldier who had survived too many battles to hesitate. And then there was Saren. She didn't fight. She didn't need to. Every time an enemy got too close, their weapons simply stopped working. Plasma rifles overheated, swords crumbled to dust, and soldiers froze in place, unable to move until she passed. It was terrifying, and Eric still didn't know whose side she was really on. The docking bay. A new problem. They finally reached the docking bay, where rows of stolen ships were parked. Freedom was right there. But of course, it wasn't that easy. Blocking the entrance to the best ship, a sleek, human-engineered fighter, was a small army of guards, at least 30 of them, heavily armed, well-trained, and behind them, the warlord himself. He stood at the top of the ramp, his golden armor gleaming under the flickering hangar lights. He was smiling. "You've impressed me, human," he called out, his voice calm. "No one has ever made it this far before." Eric tightened his grip on his weapon. "Yeah, well, first time for everything." The warlord chuckled. "You are an anomaly. Humans are. Predictable. They fear us. They kneel." His dark eyes flicked to Saren. "But you defy." Eric glanced at Saren. Did he mean her? Or me? The warlord's smile faded. "And now, you must be punished." The guards raised their weapons. The final standoff. Eric's mind raced. 30 soldiers. A warlord. No cover. No chance. Larea growled. "We can take them." "No, we can't," Eric muttered. "Not like this." Saren tilted her head. "You have a plan, don't you?" "Not yet," Eric admitted. Saren smiled. "Then let me help." Before Eric could stop her, she stepped forward. Every guard tensed, weapons locked onto her. The warlord narrowed his eyes. "You would dare challenge me, Starborn?" Saren blinked slowly. "No." Then she raised her hand, and reality shattered. The air twisted, as if the universe itself was being rewritten. The floor rippled like liquid. The walls melted away, replaced by a swirling void of stars and cosmic energy. The guards cried out, staggering as their weapons vanished into thin air. The warlord stumbled backward, his confident smirk disappearing for the first time. "What have you done?" he demanded. Saren's silver hair flowed in the unnatural wind, her eyes glowing like twin stars. "I am tired of playing your games," she said. She flicked her fingers, a simple, effortless motion. The entire army collapsed. All at once. Every single soldier dropped to their knees, gasping for breath, their bodies frozen in place. They weren't dead, but they couldn't move. The warlord was the only one left standing. He stared at Saren in shock. "Impossible," he whispered. Saren smiled. "I don't believe in that word." The hidden truth. The docking bay was silent. Hundreds of guards lay motionless on the cold metal floor, trapped in an invisible force. They gasped for air, their bodies locked as if their very muscles refused to obey them. The warlord stood alone now, his golden armor no longer a symbol of power, but a weight dragging him down. He couldn't look away from Saren. She stood calmly before him, her silver hair flowing in the strange, unseen wind that only affected her. The air around her shimmered, bending reality itself. Eric exhaled slowly, gripping his plasma pistol. He had seen powerful beings before, but nothing like this. Not even close. He had no idea what she truly was. The warlord took a slow step forward, his movements careful. For the first time, there was doubt in his eyes. "You are not what they told me," he murmured, his voice carrying something Eric had never heard from him before. Fear. Saren tilted her head slightly, studying him like a scientist observing an insect in a glass jar. "And yet you still locked me away," she said, "without understanding what you were dealing with." The warlord's jaw tightened, his fingers curled into fists. "You were dangerous," he hissed. "Unpredictable. I have seen Starborn before. I have killed Starborn before. But you are different." Saren gave a small, almost amused smile. "You still don't understand, do you?" The warlord tensed. Saren took a single step forward. The floor beneath her shattered like glass, her presence cracking the very foundation of the warlord's stronghold. Eric felt his stomach tighten. What is she doing? The warlord reacted instantly, launching a powerful energy shockwave from his hands, aiming directly at Saren's heart. A direct hit. The impact sent a pulse of energy rippling outward, making the entire hangar shake. Sparks flew from the walls, metal beams groaned, and one of the nearby ships was ripped from its moorings, crashing into the ground. Larea shielded her eyes, bracing herself. Eric watched in horror. But when the dust settled, Saren was still standing, completely untouched. The warlord's eyes widened. She hadn't even raised a hand to defend herself. "You can't hurt me," Saren said softly, as if explaining something to a child. "You never could." The warlord staggered back, his entire body trembling. And then Saren did something that terrified Eric more than anything else. She offered her hand. "You don't have to fight," she said, her voice almost gentle. "I am giving you a choice." The warlord stared at her outstretched hand like it was a venomous snake. His breathing was ragged. He knew. Saren had already won. For the first time, Eric saw what true power looked like. This wasn't war. This wasn't combat. This was a god offering mercy. And the warlord refused. With a roar of pure rage, he lunged forward, summoning all his remaining energy into one final desperate attack. Saren sighed. She touched his forehead, and everything changed. A glimpse of eternity. The warlord's body froze. His golden armor cracked, his eyes glazed over, and for a single moment, he looked like a lost child, staring into something beyond his comprehension. Eric didn't know what Saren had done, but he saw it in the warlord's face. Terror. True, mind-breaking terror. The warlord collapsed to his knees, shaking. His mouth opened and closed as if trying to speak, but no words came out. His mind was still trapped in whatever Saren had shown him. Eric stepped forward cautiously. "What did you do to him?" Saren turned, her glowing silver eyes locking onto his. "I let him see," she said simply. Eric's mouth went dry. "See what?" But he didn't dare ask. The warlord made a choked sound, his body convulsing. He tried to rise but failed, his strength completely drained. "You will never command again," Saren said. Her voice was final. "Your empire will crumble. You will never rule over another soul." The warlord looked up at her, his body shivering violently. His lips trembled. Monster." Saren only smiled. "Maybe." Flight to the unknown. Eric didn't wait for any more surprises. He grabbed Luraya's arm. We need to go. Now. Luraya nodded, rushing toward the nearest ship. Saren followed at a slow, steady pace. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. As Eric powered up the engines, he looked back one last time. The warlord remained on his knees, his body broken, not from battle, but from something far worse. Saren hadn't killed him, but she had destroyed him. Eric didn't know whether to feel relieved or afraid. The ship's thrusters roared to life, lifting them off the ground. The hangar shook violently as the fortress itself began to collapse. Saren had broken something deep inside this place. Luraya gripped the co-pilot's seat. Where are we going? Eric clenched the controls. As far away from here as possible. The ship blasted off, disappearing into the void of space. A new beginning. But at what cost? For a long time, no one spoke. Eric sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the stars ahead. His hand still trembled from everything that had just happened. Saren stood near the viewport, watching the warlord's planet shrink behind them. Her silver hair shimmered in the low light of the cockpit. Luraya finally broke the silence. She's not normal, she muttered under her breath. Not even for a starborn. Eric exhaled slowly. No, she's not. Then he turned to Saren. So, you gonna tell us what you really are? Saren smiled softly. No, she said simply. And that terrified Eric more than anything else. The Battle of Titans. The cockpit was filled with a deep, ominous hum. Red warning lights flickered across the controls. The ship's long-range scanners blared an alert. Something huge was following them. Eric gripped the controls, his jaw tightening. This can't be right, he muttered. We just left that hellhole, and now something's already on us. Luraya, sitting beside him in the co-pilot seat, ran a quick scan. Whatever it is, it's big. Her voice was tense, and it's moving fast. Saren, standing near the viewport, watched the void of space with an expression Eric couldn't read. Her silver hair shimmered faintly, reflecting the starlight. You knew this was coming, Eric said, turning toward her. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. Saren gave a small, unreadable smile. I told you. You changed the game. Eric gritted his teeth. Of course I did. But he didn't have time to argue. The scanners screamed again. Incoming. Luraya's voice was sharp. Brace for impact. The arrival of the behemoth. The stars shifted. The darkness outside their ship warped, folding in on itself as if the universe was being torn apart. And then, it appeared. A monstrous warship emerged from the void, easily 100 times larger than their tiny stolen craft. It wasn't just a ship. It was a floating fortress, built for planetary sieges and annihilation. Its hull was black as midnight, marked with strange, shifting symbols that pulsed like living veins. It had no visible weapons, but Eric knew this thing didn't need weapons. This isn't just any warship, Luraya muttered. Her voice had lost its usual edge. She almost sounded afraid. Saren watched the behemoth with calm, knowing eyes. It's here for me, she said softly. Eric glanced at her sharply. What? She turned toward him. This is a reclaimer. Eric had never heard that word before, but before he could ask. A voice filled the ship. Not through the comms, not through the speakers. The voice bypassed everything, speaking directly into their minds. Saren of the Starborn. It was deep, cold. A voice that sounded ancient, as if it had spoken across centuries. Luraya shuddered. I hate when things talk inside my head. The voice continued, ignoring them. You have broken the order. You have stepped beyond the path set for you. You will return. Now. Eric didn't like the sound of that. He really didn't like the sound of that. Saren, however, simply smiled. No. Silence. Then, for the first time, the voice showed emotion. You refuse. Saren folded her arms. I do. A low rumble echoed through space, a soundless threat, a pulse of raw energy that shook their entire ship. Eric felt it, deep in his chest, pressing against his ribs like an invisible hand. Luraya's fingers twitched toward the weapons console. "I don't like this." "Yeah, no kidding," Eric muttered. He looked at Saren. "Who the hell are these guys?" Saren exhaled slowly. "They are old." Eric narrowed his eyes. "Older than you?" Saren smiled slightly. "Nothing is older than me." That did not help. Before Eric could push further, the Reclaimer made its move, a battle beyond reality. A wave of pure force erupted from the warship, streaking through the void like a collapsing star. The energy hit their ship like a tidal wave, sending them spinning violently. Eric gritted his teeth, struggling to regain control. "Hold on." Luraya slammed her fist against the console. "We can't fight that thing. We need to jump." Eric tried to engage the warp drive, but nothing happened. The console flickered, error codes flashing across the screen. "They disabled our jump engines," Eric cursed. "Of course they did," Luraya growled. Saren, however, remained calm. She stepped toward the viewport, placing one hand against the glass. Eric noticed something strange. Her fingers didn't leave any reflection. The warship charged again. Another pulse of energy began to form, this one stronger than before. If it hit, they wouldn't survive. Saren sighed. They never learn. Then, she stepped forward. Eric barely had time to react. "Saren, wait." But she was already gone. One moment, she was standing in the ship. The next, she was outside, floating in the void, directly facing the Reclaimer. Saren versus the Reclaimer. Eric's heart pounded. "This is insane," Luraya whispered. They could see her, standing in open space without a suit, without protection. She was untouched, floating effortlessly before the massive warship like an insect before a god. But Eric knew better. Saren wasn't the insect. She was the god. The Reclaimer's voice rumbled across the void. "You cannot win, Starborn. You know this." Saren tilted her head. "Do I?" A deep silence. Then, the Reclaimer attacked. A beam of pure white light erupted from the warship, tearing through space at impossible speed. It was a direct hit, enough energy to vaporize a small moon. And yet, Saren caught it. She raised one hand, and the light bent around her, curling like a serpent caught in a trap. The energy twisted, spiraled, and then vanished. The warship's symbols flickered. For the first time, hesitation. Saren smiled. "My turn." She raised her other hand. A pulse of pure silence radiated outward. The stars themselves dimmed. The Reclaimer shuddered. The warship's mighty hull began to break. Not from force, not from energy. It was unraveling. The ship's form lost definition, its existence peeling away, as if it had never truly belonged in this reality to begin with. The Reclaimer's voice roared in fury. "This is not possible." Saren's smile widened. "It is now." With a final, effortless gesture, she snapped her fingers. The Reclaimer was erased. One moment, the warship was there. The next, it wasn't. No explosion, no wreckage. Just empty space, like it had never existed at all. Aftermath, and a new threat. Saren turned, floating back toward the ship. The moment she stepped inside, Eric took a step back. "You," he exhaled, "are terrifying." Saren smiled softly. "I know." Luraya shook her head. "That thing was a damn titan. And you just erased it." Saren shrugged. "They'll send another." Eric frowned. "Wait. What?" Saren met his eyes. "They know I'm free now, and they will come." A chill ran down Eric's spine. "How many?" Saren's silver eyes gleamed. "All of them." The final stand. The ship's cockpit was silent. Outside, the vastness of space stretched endlessly, scattered with distant stars. There was no sign of the monstrous reclaimer warship anymore. Saren had erased it like wiping a smudge off a glass screen. And yet, Eric felt no relief. His grip tightened around the ship's controls. His heartbeat hadn't slowed. The weight of what had just happened pressed against his chest. Loraya leaned forward, still staring at the void where the reclaimer had been moments ago. "So," she said, voice strained. "That's it. We just delete warships from reality now." Saren, seated near the viewport, tilted her head slightly. "Would you have preferred to die?" Loraya opened her mouth, then shut it. She ran a hand through her short, battle-worn hair. "I'd just like to know what we're up against." Saren sighed, shifting her gaze toward Eric. "You're still afraid of me," she said. Eric didn't deny it. "Should I be?" Saren studied him for a long moment. Then, softly, she said, "I don't know." That did nothing to ease Eric's tension. A shrill alarm suddenly pierced the silence. Eric's hands flew over the controls. "What now?" Loraya checked the scanners, her face going pale. "We have a problem." Eric looked at the screen, and his blood ran cold. A fleet was coming. Not one ship. Not two. Hundreds. They blinked into existence, tearing through the fabric of space. Their dark forms spread across the void like a shadow devouring the stars. Eric counted at least 50 massive dreadnoughts. Each one was larger than the warlord's fortress. Smaller fighters swarmed around them like insects. And at the center of it all, a shape that defied explanation. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even a structure. It was a presence. A shifting mass of pure darkness, swirling with deep violet energy. It wasn't physical. It wasn't even bound to this reality. Eric's mind recoiled just from looking at it. Loraya exhaled sharply. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." Saren's silver eyes darkened. "The Sovereign." Eric turned to her. "The what?" Saren stood slowly, her movements deliberate. "The one that commands them all. The one that waits beyond time." Loraya paled further. "The one that's been hunting you." Saren nodded. Eric swallowed. "And you didn't think to mention that before." Saren's gaze never left the viewport. "You weren't ready to know." Eric's pulse pounded. The fleet kept coming, spreading out like a tidal wave about to crash over them. His instincts screamed at him. There was no way out of this. They were one ship, against an entire army. The Sovereign speaks. The cockpit shook. Not from weapons, not from an explosion. It was something worse. A whisper seeped into the ship, curling through the air like mist. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't even a message. It was a thought. A presence that didn't belong in this universe. "Saren." Saren's eyes narrowed. "I was wondering when you would show yourself." Eric felt the voice crawl inside his mind. It was like 1,000 shadows pressing into his thoughts, twisting them, stretching them into something that wasn't his own. Loraya gritted her teeth, clutching her head. "Make it stop." The voice ignored her. "You should not exist." Saren's lips curled into a smirk. "I get that a lot." The air crackled. Reality itself strained. The Sovereign's fleet began to shift, their forms bending as if preparing for something far worse than a battle. Eric's gut twisted. He could feel it coming. This wasn't just a war. This was erasure. They weren't going to be killed. They were going to be unmade. "Saren," Eric snapped. "I don't know what the hell is happening. But if you've got a plan, now would be a great time." Saren turned to him. For the first time, he saw something in her expression. Not confidence. Not power. Hesitation. And that terrified him. "Saren," he repeated, softer this time. "Tell me you can stop this." Saren inhaled slowly. Not like last time. Lorea's fists clenched. "Meaning?" Saren's silver eyes glowed faintly. "Meaning I would have to burn through everything." Eric didn't understand. Everything. Saren met his gaze, myself included. The words hit hard. Eric understood then. She could stop this, but she wouldn't survive it. Larea cursed under her breath. There's gotta be another way. Saren's lips twitched slightly. I'm open to suggestions. Eric's mind raced. He had seconds to figure this out. Seconds before they were erased from existence. Then, suddenly, an idea. It was reckless. Stupid. But it might work. He turned to Saren. You said these things follow a pattern, right? Saren's gaze flickered. Yes. You said they work under rules. Yes. Then we break the rules. Saren's head tilted slightly. Explain. Eric grabbed the ship's controls. We don't fight them, he said. We rewrite the game. Saren blinked. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her lips. That's clever, she murmured. Larea stared at them. Okay, I'm completely lost. Good, Eric cut in. Because so are they. Then, before anyone could stop him, he pitched the ship directly into the heart of the fleet. The final gamble. The ship plunged forward, breaking every logical rule of survival. Eric pushed the engines to their limit, streaking through the enemy fleet at impossible speed. The reclaimer ships hesitated. The Sovereign pulsed with confusion. They had expected a fight. They had expected resistance. They had never expected something this insane. Saren stepped forward, placing her hand on the console. You're making them question reality, she murmured. Eric grinned tightly. Exactly. Saren's silver eyes gleamed. Then let's push it further. She reached out. And this time, she didn't erase. She rewrote. The enemy ships blinked. They flickered. Their forms twisted. They became something else. Not warships. Not enemies. But fragments of another reality. The Sovereign roared. What have you doing? Saren smiled softly. Changed the game. And with one final push, the Sovereign's entire fleet unraveled. The darkness collapsed. The warships vanished. And the stars returned. Aftermath. A new path. For a long moment, no one spoke. The void was quiet. Larea slumped back. Tell me we won. Saren closed her eyes. For now. Eric let out a slow, shaky breath. Good enough for me. But even as they drifted through space, Eric knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. A new dawn. The ship drifted through the empty void of space, carried by the last embers of its damaged thrusters. The cockpit was dimly lit, the emergency lights flickering as the system struggled to keep up. The battle was over. But Eric knew the war wasn't. He sat in the pilot's seat, his hands still gripping the controls. His knuckles were white, his muscles stiff. Even though it was over, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching them. Saren stood near the viewport, staring into the vastness of space. She hadn't spoken since they had rewritten the battlefield, since they had undone the Sovereign's grip on reality itself. Larea, slumped in the co-pilot's chair, let out a shaky breath. I need a drink, she muttered. Eric exhaled, forcing his body to relax. You and me both. The ship's systems beeped weakly, struggling to recover from the chaos. A few minutes ago, they had been on the verge of being erased from existence. Now they were floating in a section of space that shouldn't exist. Eric frowned, glancing at the scanners. Where the hell are we? Saren finally turned. Somewhere new. Her voice was soft, but there was a weight to it. Something about it made Eric's stomach tighten. Larea rubbed her temples. We rewrote reality. I get that. But what does that even mean? Saren smiled faintly. It means we aren't where we were before. Eric didn't like that answer. He checked the ship's coordinates again, running the numbers through the system. But the more he looked at the data, the less sense it made. Larea noticed his expression. What's wrong? Eric swallowed. This map. It's blank. Larea blinked. What do you mean blank? Eric turned the screen toward her. The galactic grid was empty. No planets, no star systems, no known landmarks. Nothing. Luraya sat up straight. You're telling me we're in uncharted space? Eric shook his head. No, I'm saying this place doesn't exist. Silence filled the cockpit. Saren closed her eyes. Then we did it right. Eric's head snapped toward her. Excuse me. Saren smiled softly. We escaped. Luraya exhaled sharply. Yeah, but to where? If this place isn't mapped, how do we know we're even in the same universe? Saren's gaze flickered. We don't. Eric leaned forward, his voice low. Tell me the truth, Saren. What did we just do? Saren hesitated. Then she said, we didn't just rewrite the battlefield. We rewrote our path. We stepped beyond what was written for us. We are outside their reach now. Eric's chest tightened. You mean they can't find us? Saren's silver eyes gleamed. Not yet. The cost of breaking the game. Eric sat back, running a hand through his hair. We just took a gamble against an enemy we don't understand and survived. But for how long? Luraya crossed her arms. They will come looking for us. Saren nodded. Yes. And next time, they'll be smarter. That sent a chill through Eric's spine. Next time. Saren turned back to the viewport. But for now, we have time. Eric exhaled, standing up. All right. First things first. We figure out where we are. He moved toward the navigation panel, running scans on the surrounding space. It wasn't empty, but it wasn't familiar either. Luraya leaned over his shoulder. Sensors are picking up something. A structure. Eric zoomed in. The image flickered, and then a station. A massive, ancient-looking station, floating at the edge of their scanners. It wasn't like anything Eric had seen before. Its design didn't match any known civilization. It looked forgotten. Luraya frowned. That thing is old. Eric nodded. And still active. Saren's expression darkened. That's not just a station, she murmured. Eric glanced at her. You know what it is. Saren hesitated. Then she whispered, it's a watchtower. Luraya stiffened. As in a defense station. Saren shook her head. No, a watchtower is not built for war. It's built to observe. Eric frowned. Observe what? Saren's silver eyes gleamed. Things that are not meant to be seen. The words sent a shiver down Eric's spine. He looked back at the station. If they wanted answers, that was their best shot. All right, he said. We check it out. Luraya sighed. Of course we do. Saren said nothing. But Eric could tell she was afraid. And that scared him more than anything. The final decision. A step into the unknown. As Eric set the ship's course, he felt a deep unease settle in his gut. They had won a battle they weren't supposed to win. They had stepped outside of what was written. But what if something was waiting for them here? What if the watchtower was not abandoned? Saren placed a hand on the viewport, staring at the distant structure. Eric watched her, his mind racing. The Sovereign was powerful. The Reclaimers were dangerous. But something else was out there. And whatever it was, it had been watching them all along.